Welcome everyone as the commemoration of Alexander Hamilton continues. I'm David Cowan, President of the Museum of American Finance. Our partner today is the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society, which is an organization that you turn to for all things Hamiltonian. We welcome their leadership, Rand Chalet, Mariana and Tom Aller, Nicole Chalet, Sergio Villavicencio, as well as friends of the museum, Doug Hamilton, Dan Simon, Susie Pock in the house, Mike Newton, our founder and former board chair, John Herzog, and Seth Kaller has brought some amazing original Hamilton documents you should check out afterwards, and of course the C-SPAN audience. Now, some 20 years ago, our board chair, Professor Richard Silla, wrote me a note that started with the words, "a stroke of luck." And what he was referring to is that he had been introduced to a SUNY Buffalo PhD candidate who was very interested in Alexander Hamilton and early American financial history. And you have to remember, this is well before the show, and while there were people interested in Hamilton, there were very few of us like Dick and myself that were doing a deeper dive on the financial aspects of his vision. And our first look at Bob was his PhD thesis, 1,300 pages. That is staggering. To put that in perspective, mine was a paltry 300. His is 1,000 more. And it led to the first quip about Bob from Dick Silla, which was, he can't hold his ink. Well, fast forward some 20 years, he's got 20 more books that he's either authored or co-authored to date. And that led to a second quip of Dick about Bob, which is that he writes books faster than we can read them. Now, if you add to that 5 edited volumes, 65 scholarly articles, many of which have received awards, and I am seriously only at page 10 of his 47-page CV, an incredible document you should check out at his Augustana University webpage, where he says he teaches, but I often see pictures of him with fishing gear in tow. Now, in case you haven't realized, Bob and I have been very good friends since we met some 2 decades ago. Yes, he loves satire. He even lists that on his webpage as his favorite type of humor. I know his family, and he has named one of his sons, seriously, Alexander first name, middle name 2 of them, Hamilton Was. Put it together, Alexander Hamilton was right. Now, we have collaborated on many projects together, Bob, Dick, and myself, whether it be books or chapters. He is on the museum's magazine's editorial board. I can tell you that when I am stumped on something that has to do with early American financial history, I often turn to Bob. He has combed so many archives. He answers often in a New York minute. Now, he is never one to shy away from a bold opinion or espousing the Hamiltonian way. He likes to tell it like it is, especially to Jeffersonians and Jacobins. And while I will tell you that's been quite controversial at times, I've been able to have a front row seat from the sidelines watching that. But I'll tell you what's not controversial, in my opinion, is his latest project, Historians Against Slavery, where he is a board member, his latest book, The Poverty of Slavery. So when you look at Bob's incredible outpouring of writing, it reminds you of somebody else who couldn't hold his ink, Alexander Hamilton. And today, Bob will address a 4-letter word that Hamilton created, debt. And while at $20 trillion today, you may think it's a different 4-letter word. Let's hear from Bob about the man who created it and its origins. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Robert Wright.
Thank you so much, David, and thanks to AHA and the museum, of course, and all of you for coming today. I know it has absolutely nothing to do with the heat outside and the air conditioning in here. Can you hear me in back? Yeah, I'm getting the thumbs up. Not to brag too much, but those books, even most of the co-authored ones, I did do the bulk of the writing with. But one area in my career that was kind of a downer was when I wrote a book with David, and David, Financial Founding Fathers, and David's name was supposed to be first on the cover, and it came out and my name was first, and that was a shame, and regret it, though I had nothing to do with it until this day. Just a little legal thing in case you ever co-author a book. Just because your name is second on the contract doesn't mean that it's going to be second on the cover. But in any event, speaking of books, according to Duke University political scientist Richard Salzman, in his new book, The Political Economy of Public Debt, 3 Centuries of Theory and Evidence, people hold one of 3 views on government debt, if they hold any at all. Holders of the optimistic view believe that debt is an unadulterated good, the closest thing to a free lunch possible in a world of scarcity. To fund their activities, optimists believe governments need only sell bonds, preferably in their own currency. Or, if debt issuance is too pricey or too dicey, governments need only print money. Inflation will occur, but inflation, especially unexpected inflation, is a good thing because it redistributes wealth from creditors, who are just evil rich people, to debtors, the poor salt of the earth. Holders of the pessimistic view, by contrast, think any government borrowing, especially long-term borrowing, an abomination. Borrowing simply imposes the tax burden on generations unborn. Every dollar the government borrows, moreover, takes a dollar away from entrepreneurs and businesses in a process called crowding out. Governments that borrow in another currency will soon find the burden too great and will hard default, like Russia did in the 1990s. Governments that are able to borrow in their own currency will soon print money to cover payments and soft default by causing unexpected inflation. That will hurt creditors, in other words, savers, the salt of the earth, and help debtors, a species of profligate swine. Holders of the third view, Salzman calls realists. For them, context is everything. Borrowing is simply a tool that can be used responsibly to improve a nation's economic situation, or irresponsibly to destroy it. In some situations, government debt is good policy, but in others, it is unwarranted. So neither pessimists nor optimists are always wrong. It depends on the situation. Moreover, savers and debtors simply represent economic positions that can and do change over, say, a life cycle or a business cycle. Neither group is inherently or morally good or bad. Alexander Hamilton's view of the national debt can be summed up in a single quotation, a line from his April 1780 letter to a Philadelphia merchant and financier of the American Revolution named Robert Morris. The line is often given as, quote, a national debt, ... will be to us a national blessing, unquote. That rendition, though, was designed by Hamilton's enemies to paint him as a debt optimist in a country that was, due to its mother's long struggle with debt dependence, solidly pessimistic about sovereign debt. But the part left out of the quotation, the ... part, shows that Hamilton was a debt realist and not prolix, as it consisted of just 5 words. Quote, if it is not excessive, unquote. So Hamilton believed that a national debt would be a blessing if, and only if, it was kept within reasonable bounds, a concept to which we will return in due time. But first, it is important to understand the context of the debt as Hamilton understood it. He was not advocating that the government should always borrow money to stimulate the economy or to transfer wealth to the poor in order to decrease the nation's Gini coefficient or some other measure of wealth or income inequality. Rather, Hamilton was arguing for the eventual repayment of a debt already incurred by the state and federal governments to win the American Revolution. Some of the burden would fall on the unborn, as debt pessimists complained, but the unborn would receive something of immense value in return, their political liberty. To fail to repay the debt owed to foreigners, a position thankfully held only by a few xenophobes, would ruin the nation's sacred honor and thereby prevent the United States from borrowing abroad to finance future wars or territorial expansions. Servicing the foreign debt would be costly in the short run, but in the bigger picture would allow America to continue to borrow abroad should it need to.